I'm Mariah, and I'm turning 45 this summer. I live a quiet life in a small town, sharing a home with my 92-year-old granny, who's both physically and mentally in great shape. She's always been my source of comfort. She and my late granddad took me in when I was a child. They're the ones who raised me. My parents had abandoned me when I was young, leaving me with them, and I never really understood why. But in hindsight, I see it was a blessing. Life with Granny and Granddad was peaceful. They loved me like their own, and we lived each day with warmth and simplicity. But something happened that shattered that peaceful life, and it felt like a nightmare. My older sister, Christine, had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. She was smart, successful, and favored by my parents, who invested everything in her. I, on the other hand, had always been in the shadows. My family had made me feel like I didn't belong. When Christine got accepted into a prestigious school, my parents decided to move with her to the city, leaving me behind with my grandparents. At first, it hurt. I was only 12, and the sting of rejection was overwhelming. But as the years passed, I realized I was better off with Granny and Granddad. I had a good life growing up in the countryside, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me. After finishing high school, I moved to the city to find work, landing a job at a clothing store that eventually promoted me to a management position. I was busy but happy, even though I had lost touch with Granny and Granddad. I was always so occupied with work that the years flew by without much communication, something I regret deeply now. One day, out of nowhere, I received a phone call. It was from a number I didn't recognize. I answered, and it was my mother. Her voice was raspy, and I could barely recognize her, but I could tell there was something off. She hadn't called me in years, and the sudden contact made me uneasy. She danced around the topic, asking about my life and making small talk, which only deepened my suspicions. Before I could really understand why she had called, she hung up. Not long after, another call came in, this time from my sister, Christine. Christine was furious. She was mad that I had hung up on Mom, even though our conversation hadn't gone anywhere. She barely let me say anything before she started demanding money. "Granddad's in the hospital," she said abruptly. My heart sank. I hadn't heard anything about Granddad being ill. Christine said they needed money for his medical bills and that it was my responsibility to contribute. "You're working now, aren't you? You should send at least $1,000 a month." Her words cut deep. She didn't ask how I was doing, didn't even tell me where Granddad was hospitalized. All she wanted was money. I sent the money because I felt I had no choice. I loved Granddad dearly, and the thought of him being sick and in need haunted me. Month after month, I wired $1,000 to Christine, despite the financial strain it put on me. I worked late hours at the clothing store and took on a night job at a warehouse just to make ends meet. I barely slept, getting maybe 2 or 3 hours of rest each day. I often got sick from the exhaustion, but there was no one I could turn to for help. I told myself that all this was for Granddad, and that he needed me. Years passed, and my life revolved around work and sending money. One day, I collapsed from overwork at the clothing store. When I woke up in the hospital, I felt more alone than ever. The nurse told me that they had contacted my family, but no one had come to see me, not a single person. It hurt, but deep down, I wasn't surprised. When I finally got hold of my phone, I saw dozens of missed calls from Christine. I called her back, and the first thing she asked was, "Where's the money?" Not once did she ask if I was okay. She was furious that I hadn't sent the money on time because I had been hospitalized. It was then that I started questioning everything. I had been sending money for years, yet I never knew which hospital Granddad was in or what his condition was. Whenever I asked, Christine would give vague answers, evading my questions and redirecting the conversation back to the money. My heart ached at the thought that I had been lied to, that I had been used by the very people who should have cared for me. But without any way to verify what was really happening, I continued sending the money. 4 years after the first request, I received news that shattered me completely. A friend from my hometown called and told me that Granddad had passed away, and that the funeral had been held a month ago. I had not been informed, had not been given the chance to say goodbye. The pain was unbearable. I called Christine, and she brushed it off, saying she was too busy with her wedding to let me know. My parents hadn't reached out either. I had been sending money for Granddad all this time, and they hadn't even thought to tell me he was gone. It felt like the ground beneath me had given way, and I was free-falling. But before I could even process my grief, Christine dropped another bombshell. "By the way, Grandma fainted recently. You should keep sending money." Her words made me see red. I had reached my limit. I couldn't believe that after everything, they were still asking for more. "Stop lying," I shouted, but Christine was unmoved. She dared me to stop sending the money, saying that if anything happened to Grandma, it would be my fault. It felt like blackmail. 20 years had passed since the day I started sending money. I was now 44, and my entire life had been spent working to support my family. A family that had abandoned me. One day, after a particularly grueling shift at the warehouse, I collapsed at home, unable to move. I remember lying there staring at the ceiling, feeling utterly defeated. That's when the doorbell rang. I dragged myself up to answer it, and when I opened the door, I found a package addressed to me. The sender's name made my heart skip a beat. It was Granny. The package had been sent from Switzerland, and there was a phone number written on it. My hands were trembling as I dialed the number, and when I heard Granny's voice on the other end, tears filled my eyes. She sounded healthy and happy, nothing like what Christine had told me. Granny explained everything. She told me how, after Granddad had passed, she had moved to Switzerland to avoid the constant harassment from my parents and Christine, who were after Granddad's inheritance. She had been fine all these years, living peacefully with friends. The truth hit me like a tidal wave. I had been lied to for 2 decades. The money I had been sending had never gone to help Granddad or Granny. It had been used by Christine and my parents, who had squandered it away. Granny was furious when she heard what had happened, and she promised she would help me make things right. A few days later, Christine called me, demanding to know why I hadn't sent the money. I felt a sense of calm wash over me as I asked her what she had done with all the money I had sent over the years. Christine hesitated, then tried to brush it off, but I wouldn't let her. I told her I knew everything, about Granddad, about Granny, about how they had lied to me. Christine went silent, then hung up. Half a year later, Granny helped me move to Switzerland. I left behind the life that had brought me nothing but pain and exhaustion. With Granny's help, I broke all ties with my family. I quit my job, sold everything I owned, and started fresh. The day I left, I felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in years, I felt free. Not long after I settled in Switzerland, I heard from relatives that my parents had fallen into debt. Without my financial support, they had been unable to maintain their lifestyle. Christine had also accumulated debts, spending recklessly without any thought for the future. They had tried to reach out to me, but I had blocked all their calls and messages. I didn't want anything to do with them anymore. I had given them everything I had, and they had taken advantage of me. Now, I was finally free of their grasp. Living with Granny in Switzerland has been like a dream. We live in a small, cozy house surrounded by beautiful mountains. Every day, we take walks together, cook meals, and talk for hours. We've made new friends, and for the first time in a long time, I feel genuinely happy. Granny often tells me how proud Granddad would have been of me, and it fills me with warmth. I had spent so many years feeling like I wasn't enough, but now, I realize that I am more than enough. Despite everything that happened, I've learned to let go of the anger and resentment. My family may have taken advantage of me, but they didn't break me. I've found peace here, surrounded by people who love me for who I am. Granny and I have created a new life for ourselves, one filled with laughter and love, and that's